Welcome to another edition of WSOU Sports Talk. I'm your host for this edition, Heaven Hill, joined by my analysts, Joe Walls and Jose Balderrama. Before we get into the discussion for this week, detailing all of the major professional sports leagues across America and the world, I have to ask you two, how are you guys doing today?
I'm good. Excited for the show. Excited to talk some sports. Hasn't been that much sports in a while, but excited for July, which is supposed to bring a lot of sports back.
I've been good. It's been weird not being able to talk sports and trying to talk sports with people who aren't really that interested anymore because it's been so far gone for so long.
Yeah, it seemed as if, it wasn't too long ago when the whole world stopped and NBA shut down, NHL stopped, and now everything seems to be coming back all in July. Like Jose said, that the MLB is returning, NHL, NBA, WNBA is all going strong. NFL training camp should be starting up next month, and of course NASCAR has been, and UFC, I believe, they've been doing their own thing for the past couple of weeks or so. That leads us into our first topic, of course, the national news from this past week, and it really swept the nation. I believe it was June 21st when a noose was found in the garage of the only black driver, in NASCAR, Bubba Wallace. The entire week, it just sparked intense debates on both sides. People that weren't fans of the sport, of course, now jumping to voice their opinions on the matter. Of course, with the protests of racial injustice and everything going on, and then FBI findings. Apparently the noose had been there since last fall, and it was just a whole weird thing. The picture was posted by NASCAR this past week of the actual noose found in the garage, and it was in fact a noose. So it was tied like a noose. And also they conducted an investigation of 17 almost 1700 garage stalls, and that was the one rope tied that particular way. So like I said, intense debates sparked around the country between fans of the sport, casuals, the media. Everyone really just wanted to chime in and voice their opinion on whether this was wrong or who was in the wrong, Bubba Wallace or the FBI, NASCAR for handling it how they did. I just wanted to get you guys' opinion on the matter. How did you react when you found out this news and this terrible situation? How did you guys react, once you saw the picture, when it circulated social media? Also, how did you react when, all of NASCAR's drivers pushed Bubba Wallace's car around the track, as he started at Talladega, and then when he finished, I believe it was top 15. How was your guys' reaction to all those events happening in about a week?
Well, first I want to say that I thought NASCAR handled this situation pretty well, as good as they probably could, because given all that was going on with the demonstrations and the protests and all that, it was justified to believe that this might have been a targeted attack to Bubba Wallace. So the investigation that was held and how they reached their conclusion that the noose was in fact there since October, all that, I thought they handled it perfectly. And I thought what happened with Bubba Wallace specifically, with all his other fellow racers and him finishing 14th, like I think that was his first time in his career finishing top 15 in a race. So I thought that was like a really special moment for him and a really good moment to bring people together, in a time where there's a lot of angst and a lot of, I guess, conflict between people, and like a lot of people who have different opinions. And like you said, I think a lot of people paid attention to NASCAR that week, and a lot of people who don't pay attention to NASCAR shifted their eyes towards NASCAR. And I liked how it turned out with how they treated Bubba Wallace after that. But whether that noose was there since October or not, I mean, that's something I don't want to get into.
I think it also did a good job because it then kind of let Bubba Wallace really open up and start to push for a change in NASCAR, because I think they're one of the last sports, at least, possibly not, but that still allow like Confederate flags in their raceways and in their stands, and it kind of opened up the debate of should this still be allowed, and Bubba Wallace kind of took that stance of ban them outright, and then NASCAR stood behind him almost immediately and banned them outright, even though they never really enforced it in the past. They've had that rule, but then they said, well, now we're going to start enforcing it and just ban them outright. And also, I think the media has done a very good job at handling this, like just especially sports media, the way that they've kind of handled all the news and have been talking with Bubba Wallace. I know a few ESPN shows have been interviewing him basically since this came up, since the news of the news came up and he kind of came out with it. I think one of the morning ESPN shows has been interviewing him throughout the process of like figuring out what happened.
Yeah, Jose, like you said, it really did bring just a ton of attention to the sport. I mean, we saw it was trending on Twitter during the race at Talladega, and it was just national news. People that I know had no interest in that sport whatsoever, they were tuning in to see, just the beautiful sight. And for him to finish top 15, like you said, for what could have been the first time in his career, I don't think he did before that point. Just a great story. It was a tremendous feeling for him, I'm sure. And like you did say, the I feel as if NASCAR did handle the situation perfectly, because when you encounter something like that, a noose with decades and centuries of negative stigma attached to it, just that image, and seeing the image that was posted by NASCAR, and they showed the noose in the garage, that really shook me to my core, because Bubba didn't see it and report it. It was someone else on his team, and once he saw it, I'm sure it was heartbreaking. So for NASCAR to take the stance they did and go instantly into an investigation, I mean, that really shows how serious they are now to, taking, a hard stance against racism. Like you said, Joe, banning the Confederate flags. We don't see them, anywhere really in sports, whether it's at the college level or the professional level outside of Ole Miss campuses. So for NASCAR to take that step, like you said, Joe, they weren't, it wasn't banned, but now at this point it's outright not allowed. So for them to take that stance and for them to investigate the noose as heavily as they did, whether it was there, since last fall or not, that really showed that, that organization is really dedicated to progressing and moving forward when it comes to race relations within the sport and the fans and the drivers. And that decision on their part might have rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. When it came forward that, it wasn't really a noose or whatever the case was, people were saying that Bubba fabricated the story or he tried to, push some sort of agenda. NASCAR handled it to the best of their ability. They acted fast. They got the FBI involved. They conducted their investigation. NASCAR and conducted a separate investigation, and then they posted their findings. There was no secrecy or anything hidden, and I appreciate that from them, just giving their fans that full view, into the investigation and what's going on. So, all in all, it was a sad sight, but luckily, with his top 14 finish, it had a happy ending, a generally happy ending. So, moving on to some lighter news, or at least something just not as dark. The NFL. Now we have a litany of topics on this league at the moment. First one I wanted to note, and it has a little bit of relevance with you, Joe, division rival, Cowboys. Dak Prescott. This past week, he signed his over $30 million exclusive franchise tender, leaving the Cowboys until July 15th to work out a long-term deal for him. So that makes him one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in the league. He's right up there with Roethlisberger and Stafford, all those guys, just big money contracts. But a lot of people have said maybe he isn't the answer under center. I want to know you guys' opinion. Do you guys think he is the answer at quarterback for the Cowboys? Is he deserving of a new contract? How much would you pay him? Do you think he isn't the answer? Would you like them to go in a different direction, in next year with the draft? Maybe Andy Dalton, Cooper Rush. Do you think Dak is a product of Zeke and his ability? I just wanted to get you guys' opinions, your thoughts. Joe, please refrain all bias if you can.
I
Just come
will
at this from a
attempt to.
neutral standpoint, please.
I will attempt to. I think he's a very short term answer under center, just because of the fact that he does have Zeke right there, kind of holding his hand where he doesn't need to pass as often as he should. But I do think they will get a long-term contract worked out, because I don't think Jerry Jones wants to let him go regardless, even though I know he's demanding something like $40 million, which is just a little outrageous. But I think they'll get a deal done, just because Jerry Jones is stubborn and probably doesn't want to let him go, because why would you let such a high draft pick go? But I also don't think he's the forever quarterback there. I think eventually he'll kind of fade out.
I think he is the long-term answer at quarterback for the Cowboys, or I think he has the talent to be. Like you said, Joe, Jerry Jones does think he is the answer at quarterback. He's stated multiple times that he thinks he's the answer at quarterback for the future. And I do think that he has a talent too. But I also agree, Joe, that him asking for $40 million, I think it's kind of absurd. I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, which means I don't think he should be paid like one. But I definitely would consider him to be in the top 10, top 12. And I think that restructuring a new contract or agreeing on terms on a new contract would be beneficial to the Cowboys, because, right now their backup is Andy Dalton, and Andy Dalton is most definitely not the answer. And they're overall a good team. They're going to be competing for a playoff spot, so they won't have a high pick in the first round for the draft next year. They won't be able to go after Trevor Lawrence or anybody like that. So I think Dak Prescott has shown in his past years that, he isn't a Patrick Mahomes or he isn't a Lamar Jackson, but he can be a serviceable quarterback who gets them to the playoffs consistently, who maybe gets him to a Super Bowl once or twice throughout his career. And I think that's all the Cowboys could ask for. His 13-3 season, his rookie year with Zeke was just, I think that was, I wouldn't call that a fluke, but I think he was helped by the team that he had with Zeke and with the defense that they had and the receivers that they had that year. But now these past 2 years, he's kind of learned to grow to be more of that mature quarterback who takes over a team. And I think this year coming up will be his coming out year, where he proves he's as an elite quarterback in this league. And I think he'll earn his money, just not $40 million a year money.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, in my opinion, I feel as if the only quarterback that should make $40 million a year or more is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's done everything there is to do in just 2 years. No one else historically has been on the pace that he's on right now at that position. He's the one that deserves to break the bank. Now, if Dak was saying something more like 33 mil a year, 34, then that makes sense. But, from a front office standpoint, Dak has to understand that there are other guys on the team that also need to get paid. So they already committed to paying Zeke like, top 5 running back, which he is. Amari Cooper is making a ton of money. You've got guys on the offensive line making, big contracts. Then on the defensive side, you've got DeMarcus Lawrence. We've already seen, this impact the Cowboys on that end, as they lost Robert Quinn and Byron Jones in free agency. So I think Dak will get his contract because, like the both of you said, he's shown that he can win and he can lead them to the playoffs. And he's shown that he can be, dependable. I think last season he started off phenomenally, but tailed off late, as defenses start to adjust. And again, I think he's definitely the guy at that position for them, and they know that as they gave him CeeDee Lamb in the first round this past year. He has Zeke, Michael Gallup, Mari Cooper. He has weapons and a dependable O-line. So at this point, all that's left is the contract. And then, like you said, Jose, then he can focus on leading them deep into the playoffs. So I personally believe he's the answer because it's not Andy Dalton, it's not Cooper Rush, and at this point, I'd I feel as if it'd be a lot easier to stick with the guy you've had there for 4 years instead of like you said, Jose, targeting a rookie quarterback. So if they do decide to trade him, I'm hearing trade rumors with the Cowboys and other teams, and of course, you don't want a situation with the Redskins and Kirk Cousins having to tag him every year. It's just a sticky situation. But I think their ceiling is obviously much higher with Dak and Zeke as opposed to Andy Dalton and Zeke. So who knows what the Cowboys will do? That's their decision. Of course, Joe, you'd prefer if they had Cooper Rush or Andy Dalton under center.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, it's in Dak's hands at this point. So if they don't work out the long-term deal until July 15th, does he hold out? Who knows? But if Dak comes out this season and has MVP caliber numbers, then at that point, his contract demands are only going to get more absurd, and the Cowboys might have to be forced to give him at least $37 million a year. So it's a tough situation in Dallas. But moving on to New York sports, there's been some Jamal Adams hysteria this past week. Now, in my opinion, Jamal Adams is the best safety in the league. I know, Jose, we're a little partial to Minkah Fitzpatrick, but Jamal Adams, he's been phenomenal ever since his rookie season. He was mocked to the Jets. They picked him up, and since then, he's been a dynamo at every level of the defense for them. At this point, now members of the 2017 NFL draft class are starting to get contract extensions. We've seen it with Eddie Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, other players as well. Patrick Mahomes, they're trying to line something up for him, and Deshaun Watson, Myles Garrett. So these guys, they're all, at the top of their game. They would like to get paid. And Jamal Adams, now after seeing Eddie Jackson get an extension, making him the highest paid safety in the league, Jamal Adams feels as if he deserves more. So what would you guys say on everything that's been going on with Jamal Adams? Do you think he's deserving of that big-time record-setting contract? If not, would you like to trade him? Or would you trade him, I should say? What do you think the Jets could give back in terms of draft capital? How do you think a trade of Jamal Adams would impact their defense? Maybe what teams could you see him go to? And do you think a contract, is on the way?
So I think that, well, first of all, I don't think the Jets are in a good spot right now because Jamal already requested a trade. So I think that the leverage that they might have when looking to trade somebody like Jamal Adams, I think the leverage went out the window. He didn't demand a trade, so that I guess that it's not the worst case scenario, but the fact that he already requested a trade means that teams can ask for less or could offer less, and the Jets might have to be forced to accept one of those trades. And going to the question of whether I would pay him as a top safety in the NFL, I would. I think he has shown in his first 3 years in the league or 2 years in the league that he is one of the best safeties in the league and that he can be for the next 5 or so years. He is really young still. So I would give him top 5, top 3 safety money, just like Eddie Jackson. But the fact that he has requested a trade means that he does not want to play for the Jets anymore because at the end of the day, what he wants to do is win. And I guess what he's seen in New York with Sam Darnold and Le'Veon isn't enough to think that he can win. So there was a list that you guys probably saw of this, like the 7 teams that he would welcome a trade to. And I personally agree with him that those are his best options if he does want to win. A trade to the Ravens or a trade to the Chiefs would be perfect for him, especially, the Ravens already have a good defense, but adding him would make that like one of the best defenses in the league. And then pairing him up with Tyrann Mathieu in Kansas City would be absurd as well. I personally would like to see him traded to the Steelers, obviously, but that's not going to happen. That wasn't a team on his list, but pairing him with Minka Fitzpatrick would make that the best defense in the league. So Jamal Adams has played really well to this point in his career, but he's reached a stalemate with the Jets, a point where he's not happy anymore. So I think the Jets are pretty much forced to trade him at this point because there's nothing that they've done to show that or to convince him to stay in New York.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. There's really nothing that the Jets can do at this point that will either make him want to stay. That includes giving him top safety money. I just don't think he wants to be there anymore because, like Jose said, he wants to win. And those 7 teams are playoff caliber teams that are have a winning culture around them. And pairing him up with some of those safeties, like Jose said, including, I know the Eagles were on that list, pairing him up with either Jalen Mills or Rodney McLeod, that makes that defense even more versatile, especially after the Eagles signing of the new corners, Nickel Roby-Coleman, and also trading for Darius Slay during the offseason. Yeah, just the culture in New York, especially around the Jets, is so underwhelming that even if they gave him top 3, top 2, even top safety money, he probably wouldn't stay. But they could get a lot of draft capital for him.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see, from both sides. I have friends who are, Jets fans as well as Cowboys fans. And the Jets fans that I know, for some strange reason, it's something with the media and, one of their writers, Manish Mehta, he reported that Logan Ryan was going to sign with the Jets weeks ago, and that never happened. And he had burner accounts for Adam Gase. It's just a weird situation going on with the Jets right now in the front office and the media on the team. And Jamal Adams clearly feels as if that situation isn't right for him. He requested the contract, and they weren't ready to pony up. And now he is looking for greener pastures. So it's unfortunate for the Jets. But again, they were willing to pay guys like Avery Williamson and CJ Mosley, big money last year. CJ Mosley especially, I believe he's the 4th highest paid linebacker in the league. He's making $17 million a year. Jamal Adams feels as if he's been there making Pro Bowls and the All-Pro team. He feels as if he's just as deserving. And the Jets weren't willing to give the guy, that's so versatile. He can pass rush and cover, linebackers, or not linebackers, wide receivers, tight ends. He can do it all, whether he's in the box or in a zone. He felt as if he clearly deserved, money as, recognizing he's the best safety in the league. The Jets dragged their feet, and now he wants, to be elsewhere. But, I think the Jets, they can pivot from this and try and get draft capital from a team like the Cowboys or the Eagles or the Chiefs. Of course, those picks aren't going to be high in the first round because all those teams are, elite. But those are still, you can still, get some sort of capital to try and recoup and put it towards other members on the team. So it's an interesting situation. Darnold, he's up. He's going to be up for an extension in a couple years. They signed Le'Veon on the offense. So, of course, the Jets front office, they're not afraid to go out and spend big money on some of these players in free agency. Jamal Adams felt as if he deserved a contract sooner, rather than later. The Jets disrespected him, and now he wants to go elsewhere. So shout out to him. Like you said, Jose, it'd be insane if he somehow ended up on the Steelers. But that never happened in a million years. But like I said, shout out to him for playing at an extremely high level in spite of the situation, rotating defensive coordinators every season. And somehow he's showed up every week at the top of his game. So kudos to him. To close out the NFL talk, just want to round up the league's efforts to gear up for next season in the midst of the ongoing pandemic. Now, I believe NFL training camps are starting later July. I could be mistaken. I don't exactly know the exact week, but it's training camps are on the way. You have players tweeting about it, and they're getting that itch back. They're starting to get that feeling back. At this point, last season, they're well into OTAs and training camps. Normally now we would be seeing, the new rookies, and they're taking their first steps on the practice field. But now with the ongoing pandemic, everything has been virtual, and some guys have been practicing in secret. So now I just wanted to get you guys get your opinions, I should say, on the league's efforts to gear up for next season. Do you guys see football happening at any level, whether it's college or the NFL this fall? What do you guys see as some potential risks from attempting to play a sport as violent as that in the midst of a pandemic? Also, would either of you guys attend games, whether you, Joe, for the Eagles, or Jose for the Steelers when they visit the Giants this season?
Yeah, so well, obviously, with the whole pandemic going on, there's a lot of precautions the NFL has to take and that they are taking for the season. And just the news broke out this week that the NFL is planning on like covering the first 6 or 8 rows and putting advertisement there to increase the money revenue that they are going to lose with the possibility of less fans in the stands this year. So there are a lot of precautions that they have to take and a lot of, I guess, measures that they have to prepare for. And the obvious risk is the possibility of a second outbreak for the pandemic coming in the fall. And what the NFL is doing different than like a league like the NBA or like the Champions League in soccer is that they're not planning on playing their season in a bubble environment. So playing all their games in different stadiums in different cities might make it more dangerous and might make it more of a risk for this season to actually happen or to finish off. I think a lot has to be seen still to see how high how high the COVID infection rate increases until September, until August, because right now it's kind of getting lower, but then all the protests and a lot of scientists have said that they expect a rise in the fall. So I guess it's a big question mark of whether it can happen. But I'm optimistic. And if the league does decide that they should play their season, which I hope they do, and they do permit fans. Like you asked me if I would go to any Steelers games or when they visit the Giants. The Steelers are planning to visit the Giants the first week of the season, Monday night, and I am planning on going to that game if they do allow fans. But there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty, and it's hard to answer a question like that right now with everything that's going on.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard to kind of shape a response to whether it's going to happen or not, because I think it has a good chance of happening, probably more at the professional level than the collegiate level, because I know at the collegiate level they've had athletes back on campuses already, especially for football, and we've seen more breakouts at the collegiate level. I know Clemson, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, it came out that like 23 of their football players tested positive after they were let back on campus. And I think they are taking a really, really big risk at not following what other leagues are doing and playing in a bubble environment, because it does run a very high risk of it spreading, because you're traveling so much more often, and you're also traveling in such small like planes and such confined spaces that just about everybody could get it.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's I would say for the NFL, it's definitely been easier. Because of the NBA, of course, if the season didn't start up with them, then they'd have to make a whole new CBA, and with MLB, we've all seen over the last few weeks, over a month, I believe, just the constant, between the players and owners. Although they did fix that, and that'll be our next point. It's been a lot of tension from the other leagues, but in the NFL, it hasn't exactly, been, a lot between the players and the owners. Everyone, for some reason, is dedicated to making this thing happen. But football might be the sport with the biggest risk. I mean, we're looking at least 53 players for the NFL, and on the college level, you're testing, about 100 guys or so every week. Like you said, Joe, with these athletes being back on campus, we saw at Clemson, I think a couple of days ago, actually, they like 14 more players tested positive, and it was at other schools as well. I believe LSU had about 23 players, and Alabama. So this is a common thing. All these guys were off doing their own thing, and now they've come back and they're testing positive. You'd have to test these guys every week, throughout the season. At that point, if a guy catches it, then they have to self-isolate for 2 weeks out of the season. It could be really bad. Like, this could go just disastrous for the NFL, but they seem committed to doing whatever they can to pursue a season happening. Like you said, Jose, they're gonna put tarps over all of those first rows or so, for advertisements, to recoup that money that they'll be losing from ticket sales. It'll be interesting. I think television ratings will be through the roof per usual. But from a fan perspective, like you said, Jose, it's who knows. Of course, we'd like for things to be better. By the time the NFL season is getting around, um, they did cancel the Pro Football Hall of Fame game, and who knows what they'll be doing for the preseason games. If they cancel that, then you're throwing hundreds of guys right back into the fire, and you're expecting them to play at a high level. We could see just non-existent defense for the first half of the season. So it'll be interesting. From a fan view, I'd love to attend the games, of course, but being, rational and being realistic, probably not the best thing until, the cases are nearly non-existent in at least that area. So who knows what the NFL will be doing, trying to combat the pandemic, whether it's, I saw a mock-up of one helmet just covering someone's entire face. Who knows what's going down? But it seems as if they're at least moving in the right direction on, from a pandemic standpoint. So transitioning into Major League Baseball, like I mentioned before, it's been a tenuous process between the players and the owners for the last several weeks. But finally, a couple of days ago, they managed to meet and come to terms and settle on a deal. So it'll be opening day on July 24th, and they added a couple of new rules, with the designated hitter being part of National League games for the first time in history. And after a game goes into extra innings, they all start with a runner in scoring position, and the season ends on September 27th. So who are you guys excited to see this season? Are you guys thrilled that the players came to a deal? What were you guys' opinions on the situation beforehand? I know the owners kept throwing out different numbers of games, and different prorated salary. It was just a weird percentage thing, and everyone was doing math, and it kept coming out to the same number. And at one point, they were arguing between 62 games and 60 games. It was a whole ordeal. Now it's finally over. Who are you guys excited to see? Players, teams? Who do you guys have as a favorite? Do you like the 60-game season idea? How do you think that'll impact stats? So on and so forth. Just give me the whole spiel.
I could go into a lot because I'm thrilled that baseball is back. I've been following just about everything with the negotiations since it came out that they were restarting negotiations, and when news broke that they were starting camps in July on the 1st, I was ecstatic. Like, it was all I was talking about for like a week. The new rules. Also, I like the idea of National League DH. I think they should have done that a long time ago. One, because it lets the pitchers rest in between innings, so it makes them exert less. I can't think of the word right now, but it makes them exert a lot less in between innings where they'd be pitching by also hitting, and it kind of gave AL pitchers a kind of distinct advantage in numbers and stats and innings pitched. But I think the player I'm most excited to watch, like everybody, is Trout, or the big names, Trout, Harper, players like that, just to see how they get impacted by a shortened season and how their stats kind of get skewed, and if they're going to have to do some sort of recalculation after the season to where they'll have projected stats that go into the totals and things like that. I don't really have like a playoff favorite. I guess the ones that are always in talks are the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Yankees, now the Blue Jays with the way that they seem to be exploding all of a sudden, which I love to see. But
for me, they reached a point where I really thought that they weren't going to reach a deal. There was just so much arguing going on, and just like so many propositions from the owners, from the players, that they weren't agreeing on anything. So it reached a point where I was like, at this point, I don't really care. But then seeing the news that they did, kind of reach a deal for 60 games, I was happy to see that, because some baseball is better than no baseball. And, whether that's a 60-game season, a 48-game season, or a 162-game season, some baseball is better than no baseball. And what I'm most excited to – well, there's a few players that I'm mostly excited to see how they perform. First of all, personally, I'm excited to see Madison Bumgarner on the Diamondbacks, because I'm a Diamondbacks fan, so I want to see how he replaces Zach Greinke as the number one pitcher on the Diamondbacks. He is getting a little bit older, but I think he still can be one of the best pitchers in the NL. And then I'm excited to see Mookie Betts on the Dodgers, because obviously the Dodgers are always the favorites to win the NL, and they always – or sometimes they do win the NL, but they never win the World Series. So maybe adding one of the best players in the MLB, they're able to finally get over the hump this year. So even though I hate the Dodgers, but I'm still excited to see how Mookie Betts performs in his new role with the Dodgers. And I'm excited to see both Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge in New York, because, they had an injury-riddled season, both of them last year, but they just missed so much time. And then they would come back, and all the Yankees fans would be excited. They'd be like, oh, finally, we're about to explode. And then they'd get injured again. And they were still one of the best teams in the AL. But I think, with their resurgence and probably being healthy this season, I think the Yankees are definitely the team to beat in the MLB, in the AL at least, and then in the NL, the Dodgers. And then the last team I'm excited to see is the Astros, and how everybody plays against them. And there's bets going on in Vegas of who's going to get hit first, or who's going to get hit by the most pitches. I just think that's a really interesting story to see throughout the whole season, because it seems as if everybody is going against the Astros this year with everything that happened. So, and a lot of people are saying that their World Series was illegitimate. So I want to see if they can actually perform as one of the best teams in the MLB still, without sign stealing. But yeah, and in terms of the new rules, the DH in the NL, I think that's good to see. I've never really had a strong opinion about that, but if everybody has the same rules, I think that's better overall. Whether that's DH for everybody or the pitcher hitting for everybody, I think that's better than different rules. And the new rule for extra innings, I think that's a good idea, because I like baseball, but I'm not the biggest fan of baseball. Like, I'm not watching all 162 games of my team. So I think adding a second base runner towards extra innings makes the game more enticing, more appealing for the viewer, for just the generic viewer, because, sometimes games would go into 15 innings or 18 innings, and that would just, I guess, get really boring or just very long and tiring. So putting somebody on second base, I guess, adds another element to the game where the defense has to play a certain way with a different strategy every single pitch or every single batter. because there is a runner in scoring position. So I'm just excited to see how this season turns out and plays out.
Yeah. Hey, Jose, I had no idea you were a Diamondbacks fan. You probably told me at some point.
Yeah, probably
This
did.
whole time I thought you were a Pirates fan, but that Greinke trade, you did manage to get 3 of their top 5
Yeah.
prospects. I'm a fan of Seth Beer and Corbin Martin. I think he has some crazy card on MLB The Show 20. I don't know. Not the point. But yeah, it's been interesting this point, to see the entirety, of this timeline between the players and the owners at the like early onset, when they were really starting to hammer out the deal. It was, a prominent player, Blake Snell. He came forward and voiced his opinions on his Twitch stream, and he discussed how, it was a risk not only to go out and play during a pandemic, but to play the sport at all. As a pitcher, you have to deal with, risks like Tommy John and, other injuries, whether it's your arms or your legs, whatever. So all of that, and then traveling, I'm sure it would have been terrible for him, especially, for someone to sign a contract and then get hurt. And it was the whole big thing. So I understood the players' end and the owners at the beginning. It seemed as if they were doing, some underhanded, lowballing, trying to get the players to play at a really low prorated salary. So now, over the last weeks, we've seen the big names just, basically come out and say they're ready to play, they want to play. Let's get this deal done. And now the deal has gotten finished. 60 games. It's gonna start July 24th. Should be a good time. Joe, like you said, I feel as if the DH rule should have been a universal rule. I mean, it's always weird to see, a DH like, an Aaron Hicks or Giancarlo Stanton. The DH role in the AL is so underappreciated because it gives older players a chance to extend their career. You could have, specialists, just players that aren't great at defense, but, they can kill the ball. But then once you watch a National League game, no one wants to see pitchers at the plate. No one wants to see that. It's never been entertaining at all, except for the maybe 4 times a season a pitcher hits a home run. It's rare, and then it makes for a nice highlight on social media. But again, we're watching hundreds of at bats from pitchers every season, and they all end the same, or most of them end the same. And it's also an injury risk, Joe. Like you said, I believe Masahiro Tanaka for the Yankees, he injured both of his quads trying to slide or running home. It's a weird ordeal every year. We've had pitchers' careers ended just from base running or being hit by a pitch. So hopefully after this 60-game trial period, it becomes a universal rule. Like you said, Jose, with the extra innings starting with the runner in scoring position, we've seen teams struggle in the past, really trying, to score or hit, I should say. We've seen teams struggle with runners in scoring positions. So giving them that extra boost at the start of every inning, every extra inning, should be interesting. Like you said, defenses have to play differently. Do you play the infield, to prevent bunts, so the runner advances? Do you back up? Who knows? But should be fun. Now, I'm a Yankees fan. Last season, it was a struggle. I believe at some point the most uh we had I think the highest WAR of players injured in history. It was just a weird thing. We had so many important, or the Yankees had so many important players on the DL week after week, and like you said, Jose, they somehow managed to win, over 100 games in a pretty tough league. So that's just a testament to the team and the players and just the talent that they have. But now this season, you've got 60 games, much less wear and tear as opposed to 162. It's going to be interesting. We could see a lot of guys play maybe 59 out of the 60, maybe all 60. Who knows how the schedule is going to shake out? But I think this was much needed, for players, their off season about 5-6 months or so, and then they're right back into the swing of things, playing almost a game a day. There's very few off days throughout the MLB season, so getting that cut down to 60 games should be interesting. As far as the stats, who knows? Because at this point, it's 60 games. If you have a 2-week slump where you're batting 150, that just tanks your season stats. And on the opposite end, we could see an insane stretch like Giancarlo Stanton had when he won MVP in the National League. And for the August and September of that season, he was putting up just Barry Bonds level numbers. So for 60 games, we could see someone hit 30, 40 home runs. Who knows? I don't personally see it happening because that'd be an insane run, but it's a chance that it could. All it takes for someone to get hot over such a small stretch of games, and their stats are through the roof. We could see someone hit over 400 for a batting average this year. So it's going to be exciting. That should be fun. I'm pumped. The Red Sox, they traded Mookie Betts. I rejoiced when they did that. Always wish the worst on Boston sports. This is just a fun occasion. And like you said, Jose, some baseball is better than no baseball. This the summer. Everything it just feels right. Knowing that you can turn the TV on and there's a baseball game happening somewhere. So now we get baseball, basketball, all of it happening at one time later on in July. It's going to be fun. Transitioning to the NBA. Now, unfortunately, I may or may not be on, a specific show, detailing the NBA return and the schedule in full with Will and Christian later on July. But of course, we can't bypass, one of the biggest sports in the world. So we can discuss it just a tad bit. Jose, I'm certain you're a Suns fan. I'm positive. Joe, I just recently learned you're a 76ers fan. So it's a little iffy, but y'all are cool. I wanted to know, what were you guys' thoughts on everything that's happened leading up to this, with Kyrie Irving and NBA players, threatening to sit out, or not threatening, but suggesting that they would, for bigger reasons. Do you guys like the bubble idea in Orlando? Of course, the WNBA is doing a bubble as well at IMG Academy in Florida. So the basketball leagues are going full force with this bubble thing. They're having players maybe wear a ring that could detect heart rate and temperature. It's the whole shebang. But Adam Silver he's pushing all his chips to the table. This could go either terribly wrong, or it could be, an amazing stretch of basketball. So what were you guys' reaction to the plans coming out? The schedule was released. How do you guys like your team's chances? Just like I said, tell me your thoughts. What are your feelings on the matter? Are you excited for basketball's return? And do you see this going good or bad?
I haven't I've never really been the biggest basketball fan, even though I do, like you said, I root for the Sixers. I've never been the biggest basketball fan, but with them kind of coming out first and saying, this is what we're doing and this is when it is happening, it kind of turned me on, and I was like, okay, maybe I should, start getting invested in basketball a little bit, like start following some of these storylines that were coming out through, whether it be, like you said, players saying they're going to sit out for bigger reasons, or even just players, especially now, saying, I'm just not going to go to the bubble because I don't trust the bubble idea. It's been really interesting to see who and what teams are saying, maybe this isn't the best idea. Maybe we should sit out and wait until next season, because I know they said that the next season is starting in December. I think that was part of their plan, was to start in December. But and also to hit on my teams, like how I think they're going to do. I think they have a good shot. I know I was just flipping through the daily schedule that the NBA released, I think either a couple days ago or like a couple weeks ago on social media. But it seems like everybody who's in the bubble and who's going back to Orlando has a fair shot at making a run for an NBA championship, which is vastly different than just about every other year where it's like there's a clear favorite and the big three from that clear favorite is like, well, this is why they're going to make it and this is how they're going to win.
Yeah, so personally, well, I'll talk about the Suns first, even though not many people care about the Suns. As you probably saw, Kelly Oubre isn't playing, and he's one of my favorite players on the Suns. He's not playing because he had a knee injury, and I personally think he's healthy enough, but he is going into a contract year, so he has decided not to play, and I think that's what a lot of players are doing, like Davis Bertans of the 76ers. He's doing the same thing where he does not want to risk an injury, like Joe said. A lot of players do not want to risk an injury for just playing maybe 8 games and then missing the whole next season and maybe not getting paid the next offseason. So there's a lot of question marks going around for players who are just maybe role players or, not superstar level. But for the Suns, I think they're just going to play 8 games and just going to have some fun because I don't think they're going to win. Like, I think the best they could do is go 3-5 or 4-4. Looking at their schedule, I'm like, it's tough, but obviously it's tough. It's only the best of the best teams. And I think that's what's really exciting about this bubble. I think that this is going to be some of the highest level basketball you've seen or we've seen in a long time. We saw that All-Star game this year where it was just some of the best basketball I've ever watched personally. I was so excited watching that All-Star game. And I think that's kind of what it's going to be like during this bubble where everybody's going to be playing their heart out. Everybody's fighting for a playoff spot and everybody who's fighting for seeding. And it's just going to be the best of the best teams, the best of the best players. And like Joe said, maybe not everybody has a chance to win because like the Suns, they don't have a chance to win. They have to go 8-0 to make the playoffs. But everybody might have a chance to win because everybody's has not been playing for 4 months. They've been 4 months without any obligated activity. So the Lakers, who were the hottest team in the NBA going into the pause, they're no longer the hottest team in the NBA probably because of how long they've been inactive. So it's just like it could be a 7 seed making a run to the conference finals and perhaps surprising the world, or Zion's Pelicans making the run to the playoffs and then pushing the Lakers to 7 in the first round, which is what I personally think the NBA wants to see. They basically gave the Pelicans every single nationally televised game that they could because everybody wants to see Zion do some amazing stuff and then play LeBron in the first round of the playoffs and have that LeBron Zion moment, kind of comparing it to the Larry Bird, Michael Jordan moment with the Celtics when they were getting older and Michael Jordan who was just coming onto the scene. So they kind of want to compare those two things, which I think is cool. I'm really excited for the NBA to be back, and I think any team has a chance of winning this, like Joe said. But I still think like the best teams are the ones that are going to come out on top, like the Lakers, like the Bucks, like the Clippers. And in terms of people sitting out, we've seen Davis Bertans or Kelly Oubre and Avery Bradley from the Lakers, and a lot of other Mejri from the Mavericks. A lot of role players have started to sit out. I think, what has been going unsaid that scares a lot of NBA fans is what if a star decides to sit out, a superstar decides to sit out? Like, what if James Harden out of nowhere comes and says, I'm not going to play because I don't trust the precautions that are being taken. I think that's what really scares people. Because if James Harden comes out and says that he doesn't want to play, being a superstar, that might push other superstars or encourage other superstars to say, hey, I don't want to play either. I think it's dangerous. I don't think it's safe. So I think that's what really scares people. And with this recent rise of COVID cases, personally, I'm starting to have my doubts of whether they can play in this bubble because of health reasons and because of players wanting to sit out.
Yeah, it's personally, I'm a huge NBA fan. I've been a huge fan for years. I was ecstatic to, finally get some news on a return. It should be fun. Of course, like I said, from a fan perspective, this is exciting. Of course, the Lakers have been away since March, and being that they're the top seed in the Western Conference, everyone wants to see, LeBron get that ring, or just basketball in general. There's a lot of storylines heading into this. Can Giannis get that ring? And cement his legacy as being that next big thing in basketball? Can Harden validate his legacy, add a ring, which would, in my opinion, help him surpass Allen Iverson, on that shooting guard tier list? There's a ton of guys. Chris Paul in Oklahoma City, you know, basically this NBA season gave them all a chance to try and boost their standing, and these all-time rankings, and a pandemic just threw a wrench into that. So now it's a return. It's going to go down late July. It should be a fun time. I feel as if I respect the players that decided to sit out. Avery Bradley citing, that his child has lung concerns and he doesn't want to be, a burden or offer any difficulty. Davis Bertans and Mejri and Oubre protecting their health and prioritizing, their future money. Oubre especially, because he should, you know, probably get a big contract, and Bertans as well. He's lined up to get a ton of money after, he showed that he can be an elite sharpshooter. So respect to them. But, for everyone else that goes and plays in the bubble, it's going to be interesting because we've seen this week already, players starting to test themselves as, they're heading to training camp, I believe, next week. Jabari Parker on the Kings, Buddy Hield on the Kings. It was, I think, 3 Kings players tested positive. I'm forgetting the third one for some reason. But these players now are testing positive, and then you're heading to a bubble in Florida, a state, where there's doubling cases every day. They're setting new records for daily numbers. It's going to be really, really interesting because, of course, you can't enforce the bubble as, a lawful thing. Adam Silver came forward and said that there won't be law enforcement, and it's been stressed that players will be allowed to leave the bubble, for whatever reason. So all of a sudden it's like, what if a major player like a James Harden happens to go out to an Orlando? We're not going to say where he's going, but we know where Harden likes to go. Maybe he goes there and all of a sudden he contracts the virus, and then, just the league is given a bad look, and then Harden looks bad, and this could go really rough. That's just the risk you run with trying to bring sports back in a country where the cases are still ongoing. We saw in, I believe it was New Zealand, they were able to have live soccer matches because that country handled the pandemic the right way, with quarantining to the point where they were basically down to, really almost no cases across the country. They were rewarded with being able to have live sports. And now here in America, we had governors open their states prematurely, and then we had cases spike in those areas. Now in Florida, where there's just a bunch of madness and hysteria, and people arguing whether or not to wear a mask, or it's a lot going down in that state. And now you'll have hundreds of the best players in the world all congregating in one area. So I'm excited, also very nervous, because if LeBron gets the virus, God forbid, who knows what the league will do, how fans will react. This could go very, very bad. But again, kudos to the players for hammering this out. Kyrie Irving, although he's not even playing this season, on that Zoom call with the rest of the MBPA and the players and the higher-ups, voicing his opinions and his concerns on the matter. So it looks as if Adam Silver is attempting to handle this to the best of his abilities. I know this is probably super overwhelming for him because, I don't think David Stern had to deal with a pandemic of this magnitude. And Adam Silver's only been on the job for, I believe, 6 years. So having to deal with this all of a sudden, the league just being suspended and then postponed in March, and now having to really try and start it up and build everything in the midst of possibly having to scrap the CBA entirely if the season wasn't agreed to. So kudos all around. We're going to be getting summer basketball. The ratings are going to be through the roof. That first night they have the Jazz against the Pelicans and the Clippers against the Lakers for some reason, because of course you'd waste a premium matchup on the first night of basketball in 4 months at that point. Who knows what the schedule makers are doing? I was led to believe at the start that those first 8 games for the playoffs would be a continuation of the team's 8 games that they were going to play in March. But who knows? It seems as if they made it so that it's all ratings based, and there's like 3 or 4 nationally televised games a day. It's going to be fun. I'm pumped. I'm excited. I'm thrilled to talk about it more in a couple weeks. But I'm glad to have gotten you guys' opinion on the matter. Joe, from someone who's just, getting into the sport and starting to learn about the Sixers and covering the game. And Jose, as a Suns fan, although there might not be too many positives, you have Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. He was looking good before the season stopped. You got Rubio. You got some cool guys, Mikal Bridges. And so there's, all hope is not lost. Yep. Yeah. See, and who knows? Maybe you do go 8-0 and you get that play-in tournament. And hey, who's to say? I don't know. Anybody can heat up.
Yeah.
So now, transitioning from pandemic talk to this, in my opinion, is the highlight of what I wanted to touch on. June is known for being the month featuring the NBA Finals and the NBA Draft, where we see champions crowned and future generations arrive. Over the past week, we've had a ton of milestones. Now, I'm going to read out milestones that happen on a specific day, and I want you guys to give me your thoughts on the matter, or how you felt when this happened, or, how do you think this impacted the league then, so on and so forth. So, June 20th, Dwayne Wade won his first ring in 2006. He won Finals MVP at the age of 24. He averaged almost 35 points a game, almost 8 rebounds a game, almost 3 steals a game. Heat's first championship in franchise history. He averaged almost 40 points a game after going down 0-2 versus the Mavs. And in 2019, Zion Williamson and Ja Morant got drafted on June 20th. So I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on the matter. D-Wade winning that ring in 2006 with Shaq and Alonzo Mourning and Gary Payton. Were you guys fans then? Or when you found out about it later on, how did you react? Also, where do you rank D-Wade, among the all-time shooting guards? And then Zion and Ja being drafted June 20th, 2019. Who do you guys think will win Rookie of the Year between the two of them? Who do you guys think has the more star power, I should say? And between the two, they'll both be in the bubble. Who do you think will have more success in Orlando?
Okay, I'll go. So about D-Wade, I actually did watch those finals against the Mavericks that year. I remember perfectly that the Heat went down 0-2 in the first 2 games of the series, so the Mavericks were looking good. But D-Wade and Shaq were able to pull it out, and I think that was just, D-Wade's coming out party where he showed that he could be one of the greatest players in the league and ultimately one of the greatest players in history. We all knew that Shaq was that player. He was getting a little bit older by that time. He had already won 3 championships with the Lakers. But, that championship for the Heat was Dwayne Wade's coming out party in the NBA. And surprisingly enough, he won a title before LeBron James ever did. And, LeBron is probably the greatest player coming out of that 2003 draft class. But I think Dwayne Wade is obviously the second best player coming out from that draft class, and I would definitely put him in top 5, top 10 all-time shooting guards in the NBA. And for Ja and Zion Williamson, they were drafted slightly over a year ago, and I'm expecting big things from them in their career, like overall. Like maybe not this year, maybe I think one of them is going to make the playoffs, and none of them is going to make it past the first round of the playoffs. But I think they're going to be really, really good players, especially Zion Williamson. I don't want to be the guy that just follows what all the national media says, but I think Zion Williamson is going to be a great player. But as far as this year goes, I think Ja Morant is going to take the Rookie of the Year award because Zion was injured for a great part of the year, so he didn't play that much. But Ja Morant had a great year, and he's put the Grizzlies in a playoff position where nobody expected them to be in this position. So I think Ja and Zion are going to be great players in the league.
I think I didn't watch the 06 finals. I kind of found out about that later, and like my first introduction to Dwayne Wade was really when LeBron and Chris Bosh, and they made that the first big three, what people consider to be the first big three in NBA history that kind of led to this new style of team making. But I do think after learning about it later, that is definitely like the defining moment for Dwayne Wade was that were the 06 finals. Like Jose said, it was his coming out party in a way, where he kind of proved that he is the second best player in that draft class, and he was going to be a top 10 or top 5 shooting guard. As for Zion and Ja, they are the future of the NBA at this point, I believe. They've been touted as the future of the NBA since college, and coming in and seeing that they've both had equal success, especially Zion in less games than Ja, kind of cements them as the two futures to both not only their franchises but the league as a whole. That being said, I do think Ja is going to have probably more success in the bubble, and 2 is probably going to win Roy, just because he's had more games played than Zion, because Zion was hurt for such a long time. So he just has more numbers than Zion, and that's really what it comes down to with the awards.
Yeah, D-Wade winning that ring in 2006, that was really a great moment. Being drafted to a 25-win team and then winning a ring in 3 seasons is just a testament to his work ethic and his attitude, bringing that positive winning mentality to Miami. Kudos to him, just giving the Mavs absolute buckets now. People are saying that series is rigged, and I wasn't there for it. I was watching highlights. He did shoot an alarming amount of free throws, but that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is the Mavs, they couldn't close the deal. Okay, he averaged almost 35 points a game at 24 years old, and that deserves recognition. He was the first big name from that class to win a championship besides Darko Milicic winning as a rookie with the Pistons. We're not going to get into him. So shout out to D-Wade. I think he is now reaching the point where he's getting a little underrated as a shooting guard all time. I've seen people place Harden over him. I've seen people have Allen Iverson as being more important to the game. But one thing people can't disrespect D-Wade is his attitude and that energy he would always bring to the game every night. Whether it's in Miami, Cleveland, Chicago, whatever stop, he was going to bring that positive feel, and he's going to try his best and will his team to victory. So shout out to him. I know he's been killing it in retirement, but that first championship in 2006, you can't take that away from anyone. Shout out to him. Now with Zion and Ja, this past draft class, people are saying it could have that impact that 2003's had. With Zion, Ja, RJ Barrett, there's a ton of big names and players looking to make their mark. Zion putting up historic numbers in about the 10, 15 games he played. And Ja has just been consistent and dominant, his entire rookie season, leading the Grizzlies, to a playoff spot to this point. So should be fun season 2. I believe that Ja will win Rookie of the Year. He deserves it. He's been around this entire season. And Zion, although he was on an absurd pace and probably will be better in the future, I think you can't take this season away from Ja, just the work he's put in and the effort he's really brought to that position, filling, and the hole that was left by Mike Conley when they traded him to the Jazz. Conley was there for over a decade, big shoes to fill, and Ja's come in and has done that tremendously. So shout out to him. Now, unfortunately, I had a ton of other moments that we could have gotten to. I had OKC Big Three stuff and 2011 NBA draft and Ben Simmons Rookie of the Year talk. That was for you, Joe. I had a feeling, but unfortunately, we have to come to a close. This was a great time with the both of you. I really enjoyed getting your feelings and your opinions on the various leagues that we discussed, whether it was the MLB, NFL, NBA, NASCAR. Great to hear your opinions and your thoughts on the various matters, of sports returning in the midst of a pandemic and players sitting out for bigger social issues and so on and so forth. So as we wrap this up, do either of you have any, what we like to call last licks? Do you guys have anything to say when it comes to sports? Really just anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like I said at the beginning of the show, there's been a long pause in professional sports here in the U.S., and I'm just excited for July to come. Like we said earlier, a lot of these sports are coming back, and a lot of these sports are planning on coming back strong, and I just hope that they happen. I just hope that all goes as planned and nothing goes badly as it might go. I'm just excited to see all these players get back on their respective fields or courts and perform at the highest level and root for my favorite teams again, because, it's been like 3 months and I'm starting to think of what my life is without sports. So, I'm just excited for everything.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I've been ready and raring for sports since the pause, and it's been so long that like I haven't really thought about it, but now that it's coming back, like I've really just been so out of touch with everything with sports, but I just want baseball back, man. That's all I want.
Yeah, I would say for my last lick, of course, it's interesting to see how everything is going to be handled. Once players get to the bubble, for the NBA players, at Disney World, and for the WNBA players at IMG Academy. But like you said, Jose, you just have to really pray and hope at this point that everything goes according to plan and that there are no hiccups. Because, if a prominent player gets the virus or something goes wrong, the backlash and the ripple effect will be felt for years to come. So sending good wishes, good thoughts, good vibes to everyone involved, with what's going on and hammering out these deals. And like you said, Joe, all the sports are coming back. July is going to be a fun month. It's going to be exciting. Everything coming back all in like a 2-week span. I know my eyes are going to be glued to every screen I have. But that's all the time we have for now. That was another edition of WSOU Sports Talk. For my analysts, Joe Walls and Jose Balderrama, I was your host for this week, Heaven Hill. Take care.